So Donald Trump scammed his most loyal supporters during the 2020 election. New reporting from the New York Times shows that in the later stages of that campaign, in the fall, close to the election, Donald Trump, without the knowledge and consent of his donors, changed it so that donations that were made one time were automatically enrolled into a weekly donation. So millions of dollars were effectively fraudulently donated to the Trump campaign because there were a lot of people that gave $100 as a one-time donation, but it ended up being $400 a month that many could not afford. And so a lot of people defaulted on their credit cards and all these sorts of things. I want to read you some reporting here because for some of these people, it literally ruined their lives. It says here, Stacey Blatt was in hospice care last September listening to Rush Limbaugh's dire warnings about how badly Donald John Trump's campaign needed money when he went online and chipped in everything he could, $500. It was a big sum for a 63-year-old battling cancer and living in Kansas City on less than $1,000 a month. But that single contribution, federal records show it was his first ever, quickly multiplied. Another $500 was withdrawn the next day, then $500 the next week, and every week through mid-October without his knowledge until Mr. Blatt's bank account had been depleted and frozen. When his utility and rent payments bounced, he called his brother Russell for help. What the Blatts soon discovered was that $3,000 in withdrawals by the Trump campaign in less than 30 days. They called their bank and said they thought they were victims of fraud. It felt, Russell said, like it was a scam. But what the Blatts believed was duplicity was actually an intentional scheme to boost revenues by the Trump campaign and the for-profit company that processed his online donations, WinRed. Facing a cash crunch and getting badly outspent by the Democrats, the campaign had begun last September to set up recurring donations by default for online donors for every week until the election. And as the article notes, the New York Times article goes into great detail, these boxes were auto-checked. So it was a box saying, make this a weekly contribution, and you didn't click it. It was already clicked for you, which means you had to actually catch that and make the decision to turn off the weekly donation. I've never seen that. I've made donations to political campaigns, and they've often said, do you want to make this recurring? And you can affirmatively agree to say, make this one-time $5, $10, $15 donation a monthly donation. It's great. You know, I think that's great that people can choose to make recurring contributions, but you got to give people the choice and not hoist it on them by default, especially since up until the fall, you hadn't been doing that. And so some people sort of making a donation that they made in, say, June, come back in October, make a $50 donation, just assume that that 50 means 50, but according to Trump now, that 50 means 200, maybe more a month. You can see that this fooled people, and you can see that this infuriated people. This graph the New York Times provides shows, this chart, it shows the level of refunds in the Biden and Trump campaign throughout the year, throughout 2020. And what it shows is that Biden refunded about 20 million, but Trump about 120 million. Trump had almost 6 times the refunds Joe Biden did. And that's because of this scheme. You can see they were relatively even, but when Trump and his campaign started auto-checking boxes to rope people in to recurring contributions they didn't consent and agree to, refunds spiked. And so what this shows was a gamble by Trump and his team. They're going to do this, they're going to pay out more refunds, but a small portion of people will just allow it to skate by. Or maybe they didn't catch it. Or maybe they caught it and they weren't willing to ask for a refund because they didn't want to, make a scene. Or they didn't want to hurt Donald Trump's feelings, or what have you. This is awful, and it shows how central Donald Trump ripping off his own people was to his political career. This was always first and foremost about making money. Donald Trump ran for president to make money. He didn't really run for president to make the world better. He didn't necessarily even have a deeply ideological mission as his number one goal. He had, viewpoints and policies he liked and didn't like, but the number one goal was getting even richer. That's why a lot of people felt he didn't even super want to win and didn't expect to win and was going to lose and then start Trump TV or a Trump media network and set up this sort of empire that would synergize with his existing brands. And then he would be able to say, I'm a former presidential candidate and I came close to winning and I'm going to start this conservative media network and make a ton of money. So losing was part of the plan, some people suggest. And of course, he didn't lose, at least the first time. He ended up winning, surprising himself, and had to be president. But while he was president, the grift still continued, right? How he fundraised. He lied to his supporters. He misled his supporters. And again, not all of these people could afford the donations. You're talking about people who give everything they can. They believed in him. We can hate Trump, but we have to acknowledge millions believed in this man. They believed in him and they trusted him and they loved him, and we can call them idiots for that. But the fact of the matter is they got fooled and they got taken advantage of. And they gave money they probably couldn't afford, and then Trump made them give that money they couldn't afford 3, 4, 5, 6, however many times until the end of the campaign. Right? That's what we're talking about here. And it happened after the election. We talked about this before, but when Trump was spreading the big lie about the election, he was asking his supporters to donate to the Trump Legal Fund. But the fine print on that fund basically was that if you don't give me thousands of dollars, every cent you do give me doesn't actually go to the legal fund. It goes into the Trump campaign coffers, whether he wants to use it to run for 2024 or what have you. Donald Trump scammed his own people. He scammed them before politics with all of his crazy businesses like Trump University. He scammed them in office to get donations from them while doing nothing to help the actual working class people. He scammed them in the second election with this auto donation scheme, and he scammed them afterwards by asking them to donate to a legal fund that essentially didn't really exist. And so if Donald Trump runs again, there's going to be more than a few reasons why he chooses to. But number one above all is that he's doing it to rip his own supporters off. This man hates the people that love him most.